Welcome back, gents. You can see here I have my 6-arc AR set up here, and what I plan on doing is probably too much testing for one range trip. But primarily, it's going to be about ramshot tack. So let's go over our loads here. Here, we're testing Nozzler Custom Competition, and we're doing a primer test. So we have Remington 9.5, CCI, and then the RUAG primers that I got from Powder Valley. Going up, there's no seating depth test, it's just going to be a powder test. So we're going up from 24 all the way up to 26 grains, which is pretty stout for the AR platform. So says the load data. Here we're testing Barnes match burners and Hornady brass, by the way, which is different from over here. That's actually Starline. And here we're sticking with the RUAG primers, and we're going from 24 to 26.5. So a little bit more spicy. But what I plan on doing here is I'm going to do 4-shot strings because I'm missing some brass, and I'm going to test take 2 of talking about my lowers because the wind has picked up. So I have 2 different lowers here. Both are from New Frontier Armory. That is my original lower, which is Polymer, again from New Frontier Armory. Right now I have a Trigger Tech Duty 3.5 pound pull trigger in it, and a carbine length buffer tube system with a Strike Industries Flatwire spring. That's supposed to be pretty good. It's made out of 17.7 stainless, which is pretty mil-spec last I heard, but it's a Flatwire spring and it's been cryogenically stress relieved. We'll see how well it does. This is my new lower. It is a billet lower with my old Timney trigger. That's the 75th anniversary one that has a 3-pound trigger pull. It's not going to be an apples to apples comparison, but the thing I'm worried about, this is a rifle length gas tube. This is the BCM MK2. So that's the equivalent of the Veltor A5 system. And we're going to see how well that affects the recoil impulse. Because this is 6-arc. If there's going to be a system in which it actually matters, it's probably going to be this one. That said, enough yakking. Let's get to shooting. Okay, so I just finished firing the top 2 charges. And this is my BCM MK2 stock, so the rifle length stock. Most of them landed, again, over here. And you can see one right there. So that's about 330. One right here, there, 3 over there. We need 8. Wait, oh, there we go. There we go. There's 8 right over there. So we're good. So that's still about 4 o'clock. Let's test the carbine length buffer tube. Okay, so this is my carbine length buffer tube with the Wilson Combat stock. I just finished firing the top 8 charges. So let's take a look where they ejected. Over there, about 330. Let's get up and actually do a count. So we have 1, this is pretty much right at 3 o'clock, 3:15, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the oddball right over there, that's 8. So I say that's the oddball one because that was the one that was jammed into the case. So I'm willing to call that a mulligan. So with the carbine length buffer tube and that Flatwire spring, did I see a huge difference? Really, ultimately, no. And I would go as far as to say they're basically the same. The big difference, I will say, is that the carbine length tube with the Flatwire spring actually didn't eject quite as far. And that was consistently so, not by much, like a foot or so. And one could make the argument they were more in the same area, more consistently in the same area, but really basically about the same. I'm not going to really split hairs there. Anyway, let's take a look at our targets finally. Okay, gents, so this is our rifle length buffer tube system. This is our carbine length buffer tube system. And we notice some pretty big differences. Let's talk about those differences. So again, this is the minimum charge. We read it like a book, going from left to right, up to down. So minimum charge did by far the worst. Look at that. That's like a 2-inch group. Going up to 25 grains, you can see here we tighten up to just under 1 inch. Still nothing to write home about, but not bad. Right here, again, It might be slightly bigger. It's horizontal stringing and 3 overlapping, huge shift down, about an inch. Although, let's go ahead and say that that too is also a huge shift in point to impact. But this is just some sort of, this is horrible. So we can almost ignore that. Here, we can see, again, about an inch. But we're going a little bit to the left and a little bit down for the point to impact shift. And then this is pretty much the opposite. We're going right and down. So I'm glad that we're going downward as we go up in charge. That's some consistency, but we are kind of whipping all over the place. This is a lighter contour Wilson Combat barrel. It's not exactly a heavy barrel contour. This is with our polymer lower with the carbine length buffer tube, flatwire spring, and yeah, very interesting to see that this is, it's not drastically different, but it's definitely notably different. It's measurably different. Overall, the groups, in terms of the average of everything, are worse. They're generally over an inch. This is our best group, it's about an inch. However, up here, definitely our worst group of the day. And that's even with warm-up shots. So there's no excuses here. This just is what it is. All these, though, they almost strike me as a little bit more consistent in their average, but also in terms of their point to impact. Because look here, generally about an inch low. Here, generally the point to impact, it's shifted a little bit, but not as much. Here we have a huge shift over to the right. Well, not a huge shift, but a shift over to the right. This stays over to the right. We have some horizontal stringing. Then over here, things are going down and to the right, kind of like with our max charge there, thankfully. But you can see here, it's the 3. The group is definitely opening up. And this is the one that got jammed into the case thanks to the failure of the feed. It's really not too different. So yeah, wow. That's an eye-opener. So I wonder how much of that is because of dwell time and lock time and all the other fun stuff. And I wonder how much of that is because of the harmonics of a different material in the lower. Because we can't really attribute this to the difference in triggers, right? I mean, it could be the reason why these generally did a little bit worse. I'll cop up to that. But the huge shift in the point to impact, not so much. Not so much. Because this is definitely more over the place. Well, what do you guys think? I'm gonna pose that question out to the audience, I guess. There's a lot to pull from here. I think there's a lot to learn. I don't think I want to spend too long talking about these esoteric points, but I'm going to anyway. Not that I'm any sort of expert, but I actually have the opportunity to show you something that may or may not be observable, because, as you may or may not know, people like arguing on the internet, and they love splitting hairs. And if you're switching out things like your lowers, or especially your buffer tube lengths, or your spring weights, your spring strengths, or your buffer weights, there are some people that are like, hey, just so you know, that is going to affect how your breast ejects. And yeah, no doubt, sometimes we can totally observe that. However, they like to split hairs over other little things, like, that might be a little bit too much lock time, or what have you. Okay, sure. So as a reloader, some of these things that are talked about is cleanliness of brass. So is there anything observational with that? Well, this is the MK2, the rifle length buffer tube, with a T2 weight, by the way. So you can see here, these two are kind of sooty. Those are fairly clean. These two, you can see these two are kind of dirty. These two are kind of clean. And I'm not cherry picking here. These are all my second to last powder charges. Basically look the same. Yeah, maybe we can argue these ones look a little bit cleaner, but that's within variance, right? Also, here are the primers. Both of them are going to have some cratering, but we don't see any distinct difference there. So there can't be a huge offset, or huge difference, I should say, in the pressure levels in the chamber, because that's one thing that they bring up. So long story short, with the setup that I did here, I didn't see any huge, drastic difference.